Okay. All right, everyone. Well, welcome to the Paint Branch You Use Adult Faith Development Program. And if you are here for the Birding for Life class, you are in the right place. We have with us Reverend Dr. LoraKim Joyner. And so we're very excited to have her with us today. I'll share a more in-depth description as we move forward. But this course touches on the seventh principle and our UU source, spiritual teachings of earth-centered traditions. So we're going to have a lot of fun learning today. And also, please keep in mind that this is the first of a two-part class. So we have one session today at 10:30, and then next Saturday, same time, same place, we'll have the second session. So hope you can join us for both, but they'll both be recorded if you happen to miss it. But it's fun to be here in person. As I mentioned, we're Paint Branch Unitarian Universalist Church, and we have Sunday services every Sunday at 10 a.m. You can join us by going to our Facebook page and watch us live there. You can also watch us live on our YouTube channel as well, and we are very happy to have you join us for Sunday worship service. Now, we will light our chalice. We light this chalice to remember that our connection to nature and other species is sacred and good for ourselves and for the earth. Right. And now I'm going to introduce Reverend Dr. LoraKim Joyner. So Reverend Dr. LoraKim Joyner is both a wildlife veterinarian and a Unitarian Universalist minister, having served in parish ministry over 10 years in North Carolina, Minnesota, Texas, and Florida. Currently, she's serving as a community minister in multi-species ministry and compassionate communication, affiliated with the Community Unitarian Universalist congregation at White Plains. She draws on her training as a certified trainer in nonviolent communication and over 33 years as a conservationist and wildlife veterinarian. She's also the co-lead of a nonprofit called One Earth Conservation. And after my introduction, I'll ask her to speak a little more about One Earth Conservation, because we would really deeply appreciate any donations toward that nonprofit. So I'll put the link on how to donate there shortly. And so that said, with her team, they support others through their international Nurture Nature program that seeks to empower the people saving the planet. She directs projects in Latin America to stand in solidarity and witness to the plight of the parrots of people there and do what she can. One Earth Conservation's projects extend to Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, Paraguay, Guyana, I may be pronouncing that wrong, I apologize, Brazil, French Guiana, and Suriname, all over. She has written three books, Conservation in a Time of War and Nurturing Discussions and Practices, and then another book called Triune. Currently, she serves as the acting secretary of the Parrot Researchers Group. So she's done some amazing things, and I'm super excited to have her here to teach us and give us and share her wisdom with us today. So yay, Reverend Dr. LoraKim, we appreciate you being here. And please do share with us a little more about One Earth Conservation. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
You read the whole biography, so. So we were already starting doing bird things just by hearing all that bird background. We'll have a check-in in a little bit so you all can talk, but I'll just do a little bit about the organization, and then we'll put up the slides and have opening words. And the conversation it's a conversation, so we're going to pay attention to the chat, and if you guys have questions or comments, it's like a It's like we're in the same room together having a conversation. It's not so much information, but there is a little bit. So that's the plan for the program. Well, let's see. One Earth, I'll just say a little bit more about it. One Earth Conservation it's full of Unitarian Universalists, but we have people who are members from all over the world. And we are a very small organization, and we go where other conservation groups aren't, because we're small and we're nimble, and where no one else is working on parrots, and maybe even where it's a little tricky, uncomfortable, a little risky to get into, because we feel called to be with the people who want to help their parrots, and maybe where some other groups aren't yet. So we're always looking for the harder projects. And so we there's a lot of stories about that, and you know, probably Honduras is our trickiest project because it's basically a failed state. So we have a lot of challenges, and the people do. And COVID is really tough in most of these countries right now. We're in some ways very lucky here. And so I travel about once a month to all these various projects. And although One Earth Conservation is secular, we have this undercurrent that all species, all individuals have inherent worth and dignity. And so we really try to help heal the human heart by connecting people in ways that are culturally appropriate for them and support them in all the ways that are transformative from them. Having enough to eat, having understanding of their environment, and them teaching us. And you'll see a lot of that in the presentation about how we have a very compassionate, human-centered way of conservation for parrots. And why parrots? They're the most endangered group of parrot birds in the world. We're losing them. You know, it's one more of those sad stories. But some people are making a difference. And you all, by being here with me and maybe contributing, are helping to make a difference too. So that's quite a bit about the organization, but it might help you understand where I'm coming from on our slides. So if there's any questions or comments, go right ahead while I look to put the slides up. And we're seeing that okay?
Perfectly. You can see it very well.
That's just great.
Yes.
This
Mhm.
is great.
Ebony,
I've got the
Ebony,
chat
make-
over there.
Make the screen big.
I'm sorry?
Can you make the screen big, Ebony?
It's big on my screen. I think it's it has to do with how you're clicking your screen.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
it's
what I
big on
thought.
my screen too.
So you
Big
have-
over here also.
yeah, it's
Okay,
something on
so-
your end where you have to enlarge the screen or do something.
Yes, I guess so.
Does it? Do you want some help with that? Can anyone help him out with that?
I just got up.
Yeah, Mike, in the top right-hand side, you might see a box within your box, and you click that and it may expand your picture.
Okay, I've tried, there we go. Okay,
Yay!
Yay.
thank you all.
There we go. So I want to do these opening words by a poem by Mary Oliver. And what you're hearing are starlings in the background as I read this. Chunky and noisy, but with stars in their black feathers, they spring from the telephone wire. They are acrobats in the freezing wind. Ah, world, what lessons you prepare for us. I'm thinking now of grief and of getting past it. I feel my boots trying to leave the ground. I feel my heart pumping hard. I want to think again of dangerous and noble things. I want to be light and frolicsome. I want to be improbably beautiful and afraid of nothing, as though I had wings. So I just want to give us a chance to check in. I'll have a chance for maybe everyone, if you'd like. You can do it in the chat or you can do it with audio. Who's here? I'd love to be able to know you. And the
I'll
check-in
start. This is-
question is, if you feel like sharing, it's not mandatory, is what do birds mean to you? You know, why
I'll
are
start-
you here today? Maybe
I'll
that's
start.
another way of doing
This is
it.
Eric Most.
And maybe also the poem was about how birds have helped us by even starlings, which a lot of people don't like. How have birds helped you? So who are you? What do birds mean to you? And where have maybe they helped you? And just a minute or so each. And I'll start just to sort of model the time that we're talking about. I'm LoraKim Joyner in White Plains, New York, with the community UU congregation there. Birds mean like everything to me. I dreamt them as a child. I went to the woods with them, and all my professional life has been with birds. And they help me all the time, mostly in their beauty. Just helps me feel lighter. Okay, so that's my check-in. Who else would like to go?
That's Eric.
Hi.
Hi there, this is Eric Most. I don't know if you heard me before, I couldn't tell.
Yeah, I was still talking, so good to hear you again.
I'm here with Trisha Most also. We love our birds. I'd say that we've done several birding things, gone on tours, walked around all over the place, do all kinds of bird feeders and everything we can think of, I guess, right? Pretty much, Trisha?
Yeah, we recently planted a lot of native plants in our yard in order to attract more birds and other pollinators. So we're passing the baton to somebody else.
We call them Burkles, just so you know.
Good to meet you.
Mike, would you like to go next?
I can. My name is Mike McMenamin. What birds mean to me, I view them as flight and flight as freedom. They're unbounded by gravity, or so it appears, and that suits me just fine. They're inspirational. Thank you.
I can go. My name is Renee. I'm a member at Paint Branch. I've always liked birds, but I think I hadn't paid as much attention to them maybe before the pandemic and stuff. And when we, had them on our deck, and it was like the one thing to look at. So then it's been really neat. Like the more I learn about it, the more there's to learn, and the more I notice them. And I didn't think I'd be able to tell a difference, once I started to notice and actually be able to know what kind of bird it was like. Wow. So it's been a nice new thing to appreciate the last couple of years.
Is that everybody?
Excuse me, I can go. My name is Stephanie, and I'm here kind of roundabout. My sister is a member of All Souls in DC, and she sent me an email about this because she knows that I love birds. So I was like, why not? And yeah, very similar to what Renee said. I'm in Massachusetts. I grew up in Massachusetts, and very fortunate to be in the woods and surrounded by trees. And so I always liked birds, but it really was this past year that I really sought solace in the birds. I felt like they helped me feel less alone. So.
Well, that's just lovely to hear, everybody. I just feel like we could just keep talking about birds, and we don't really need my slides or my background for us to enjoy and connect with each other over birds. So that's why I really want to encourage you all to ask questions in the chat or raise your hand or something so we can.
Thank you. I'll share. I'm Ebony. Yes, I'm Ebony, and I'm the kind of program manager for the Adult Faith Development Program here at Paint Branch. I'm a volunteer. I'm also a seminarian as well. And what do birds mean to me? I just see them outside. They're pretty, and I like to look at them. Sometimes they, mess on my car. But overall, they're diverse, the variety. And I was watching something on TV the other day where someone won an award for taking pictures of these two like penguin birds who they were widowed, and they were like giving each other comfort. And it was just you could tell they're feeling beings, and I'm very curious and eager to learn about that connection that we have with them and how to help them. And I'm just really open to learning more. I love animals in general, but I think that, personally, spiritually, I can do more to support, other species and things. So I'm looking forward to learning about, action, what I can do, and have the understanding to kind of back that up for myself. So really glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Ebony. I think one of my favorite things in the world, well, one is to be with birds, but it's actually to be with birds and people together. And so that's just really fun for me. And so thanks again for inviting me. Oh, wow, there's so much we could say about connecting to birds and how it's good for them and good for us. And you all brought up the pandemic and how bird sales of binoculars and bird books and bird feeders just went out the roof. So many more people tuned into birds for a variety of reasons. To feel the company, and we could hear them more because human noise was down and our lives slowed down. And so what I'm doing in these two presentations is how to have birding as an intentional practice. And you could say spiritual practice, you could say mindful practice. We have a ton of information on this on our website, and we're putting together another book. But these are just some of the highlights to maybe help all of us connect to birds and how we can make it an intentional practice. And so why do we want to, I say watch, but you don't need to be visual. You can hear them and think about them and touch them, some birds. So why do we do that? Well, it's good for us, and it can guide us through transformation. Yes, change, but in a whole new way of connecting to nature and to other people in ways that it's good for all of life. Also, physical and mental health. Again, mostly I'm talking about the human species here, and we'll talk about that, how it works on subconscious levels for us to have greater health when we're out with birds. And then it can help us have a more just biotic community, which means when we connect and understand other beings in our world and have empathy and understanding, it helps us understand how to care for all of us together. So those are the topics I'm going to be talking about, and why I'm excited about spending this time with you all, so we can achieve all of those things. We need a different society. We need better care for our birds and our wildlife and our animals, and we need to be healed too and comforted. So how can they help us in transformation in this idea of liberation? As you can see, we're doing a lot of philosophy and spirituality here, and we're going to get to what birds are all about too. But right now, this is where I'm coming from on this, and in our work in the Americas, is that we can become transformed when we know ourselves and the world, reality as it is, not just human projection, which we can't avoid, but what's really going on with birds. And if we are able to transform and undo the cultural wiring by looking at birds as a tool to lead us forward, it can liberate us from the constrictions placed on us from a society based on domination and oppression. But this is an intentional thing. It's not just going out and looking at birds and learning their names, which is lovely, but this is an intentional practice, a mindfulness practice, and that this can free us as we free others. And so it's really tied into birds as symbol, as flight, and as liberation. And I'm going to guess that some of this is just going, what is she talking about? This is all this, big bird stuff. And hopefully as we go through this time together and next week, you'll see more about and maybe you just already know in your heart how birds liberate us and transform us, or other animals. So birds can teach us so much. You know, part of liberation and transformation is to know our world. So this is an old Buddhist story. And the disciple was always complaining to his master, says, "You're hiding the final secrets of Zen for me." And he wouldn't accept the master's denial. And so one day they were out walking in the hills when they heard a bird sing. And the master said, did you hear that bird sing? "Yes," said the disciple. "Well, now you know that I've hidden nothing from you." "Yes," said the disciple. So birds are a tool to allow us to see the world, embrace reality, and be embraced by reality. And we can improve that experience for us and for them in many different ways. So one way is to know birds. And this is a part of a kind of like emotional intelligence and social intelligence. One part of social intelligence is multi-species intelligence. We're all born with different ways of connecting to other species, but all of us can move that understanding along the way. And so what do we mean by multi-species intelligence? Well, it's the ability to understand their needs and their behavior and their motivations and how they relate to life around them and other species and beings so as to benefit them. This is the intentional piece. We're learning about them to help the world, which definitely includes us, definitely. Now, a more simple definition for multi-species intelligence is just asking, what are others feeling and needing? You know, what's going on with them? Down to one cell levels, there are subjective experiences that motivate a cell to move in one direction or the other. And so we just can say this is what connects us to all of life. So we're just saying, okay, what is your subjective experience and why did you just do what you did? And there are a couple things we need to watch out for. When we're trying to guess what others are feeling and needing, people say, well, how can you know what another animal's feeling when we don't even know what we're feeling and needing? We just make up stories all the time. You know, it's so much of it is subconscious that our frontal cortex goes, oh yeah, that's why I did that, but we're just making that up. And also, that may be the case. So two things to remember about that. One is we don't even know what other humans are doing. So let's do our best with other species. And the other thing is we make up stories about what other species are doing. And then we have culture, which has taught us to see other species in certain ways. And a lot of what we've been taught has not been good. It's been based on domination and oppression. So we need to undo that. So one thing to watch out for, there's sort of like two errors. One is on one side and the other's on the other spectrum. And we all do it a little bit, or most cultures and most people do. So here's what to watch out for. One is anthropomorphism, which is to say, oh, they're just like us. And they are a lot like us, but you can take it to the extreme. And so here we got some dogs playing poker. And so we can take it too much to the extreme where we assume that they're doing things because that's what we would do. And can anyone think of an example of anthropomorphism that is to the extreme? That's not, just unmute yourself or put it in the chat. Yes.
Just in thinking about birds, like I often just see people getting like kind of angry at one kind of bird for something that they do, like with another bird's nest, or like they're, going in your stove, whatever, they're a nuisance, like they're doing it to be mean, or like being a bully, and kind of like putting human personalities on them.
Well, that's right. What about cowbirds? I thought maybe you were going to mention cowbirds.
Yeah.
They lay their eggs in other birds' nests, so other birds have to raise their young. And so I've been out bird watching with people and I go, oh, what's that? Oh, that's a brown-headed cowbird. It's a trash bird. Because they don't like it, or they don't like grackles or crows that eat other birds' eggs and young birds. And so that's not a good bird. That's
starlings.
Yes, the starlings, right? Yeah, that's right. And we do it like with cats and dogs and all of our animals. So that's one end. And here's the other one. And the other end of the spectrum. And there's a lot of different words. And I'm using the word Anthrocentrism. It's where you put humans in the center of all life and everything that's important. And it's another way of saying they're nothing like us. Humans are so completely different from every other species that they're nothing like us. And it sets it up that we're better than them. And so that's what we need to be careful of. And let me give you an example of how that works. And then you can tell me some of your examples. So I'm a veterinarian, and I went to vet school during the 1980s. And I was in orthopedic surgery. I was in that rotation. And the dog was coming out of bone surgery, which, you know, can be really painful. And the dog was howling in the kennel, recovering. And I asked the resident, I said, can we give something for the dog? The dog looks like they're in pain. And the resident said, no, that's not pain. That's just a reaction to the anesthesia. We were not taught how to give pain medications to any animals that we worked with. There were only 3 papers at that time in the 1980s when I started vet school for how to treat animals with pain medication. Now there's hundreds of thousands. So we thought they're nothing like us, that dogs don't feel pain like we do. And so we didn't care for them. And that's completely turned around now. No one goes to veterinary school without learning a great deal about pain medication. So that's something we need to watch out for. You know, they're not like us. And I don't know if maybe any of you all have any examples of that in your life with other species or with other humans. We do it with other humans too.
The only thing I can think of is like my cat. I sent her to the vet. They ended up having to pull one of her teeth out because something happened. But anyway, the vet gave her some pain medicine while she was there. But when she came home with just antibiotic. And the next day, when the pain medicine wore off, like I could tell my cat was not comfortable. Like it was very clear to me. And I called the vet back and I said, hey, you know, I only got antibiotics. Is there any, you know, pain medicine? And they're like, oh, well, we gave her pain medicine before she left. I was like, but how long does that last? And they were like, oh, X amount of time. I was like, but it's been over that time. Can I come pick up something else? And so they let me, it was like 5 little vials of like some kind of ibuprofen like stuff, but they had it, but I had to like ask extra for it. You know, like if it were me, they would have sent me home with like antibiotics and pain medicine. Why did I have to go, you know, above and beyond to get pain medicine for my cat? You know, it was just interesting to me. So that's what that comes to mind for me right now. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the pain and the suffering that they just don't feel like we do. And I'm going to give some specific examples around birds coming up next, so we can get into that. Wow, I didn't know that about birds. Wow, we were getting that wrong for so many years. And here's one of the things that people, and we still get wrong. I still hear it, and I hear it in sermons, and I hear it in popular books. But it's like we just need to get rid of this word. Have you heard it's called the triune brain or the reptile brain? And it's the theory out there, the popular theory that as vertebrates developed, we had the very primitive part of our brain it's just reptiles, because reptiles just, you know, they're not thinking, they're just responding. So that's a really basal part of our brain. And then mammals came along and developed the limbic system, which is located here, which is processing emotions. And so when mammals came along, we started having emotions. And then we got our smarter animals, and they developed this cortex, you know, for, you know, processing all this input. And then the super social, the eusocial animals, here's the frontal cortex, where you need a lot of that reasoning ability to get along with a lot of different people. So here's what the leading vertebrate comparative anatomist told me several years ago, is this is all wrong. Get rid of all this, because reptiles have it all. They have every piece of that tissue within them. And so we can't say that, because reptiles feel and think and make decisions and have subjective experiences. So we can't base our understanding of brains based on the kind of species they are. And so as an example of this, here are birds. And do you know that birds are actually, if you look up in Wikipedia, are called theropod dinosaurs, which are the two-legged dinosaurs like the velociraptors, that they now all paint with feathers, by the way, if you see the pictures. And so birds are actually a kind of dinosaur in actuality. And so if we take our birds and we go back to dinosaurs when they were more truly reptiles, and here is brain scans. So here's birds and here's dinosaurs. So that's kind of like early birds. And then if you go further back, you get into crocodiles, which are pre-dinosaurs, really ancient species. And all those different colors on the brain show you that they all had the same kinds of tissues, even though they go back millions, hundreds of millions of years ago. And so this is just an example of how we got it so wrong, thinking that reptiles and birds didn't think or feel because we thought they were more primitive brain structures. And I'm going to say a little bit more about that. Here is an endocast of a dinosaur. This is a Tyrannosaurus rex. So here's our, our eyes and our nose here. Oh, wait. Yeah, right there. And here's the brain. And so each of those colors is a different kind of brain tissues. And you can see that dinosaurs had all the same kind of tissues that we did. The basal part of the brain, the limbic part, and the cortex, like us. And so the more we understand about dinosaurs and reptiles, we're seeing, oh my gosh, they're having subjective feeling going on with them. And here's how it happened in birds. This actually happened during my lifetime. Have you ever heard the phrase bird brain and the idea that chickens and pigeons aren't really smart? I grew up with that, at least. So a paper came out in 2005 that said, oh my God, we've got it wrong. We've been getting it wrong, because what birds have, they don't have much cortex. They have a kind of tissue called pallium. So this is where our cortex would be. They have something called pallium. So we thought they weren't very smart because they didn't have very much cortex. They have something called convergent evolution, which means they took a different kind of neural tissue and made it do the same thing that our cerebrum, that our cortex does. And we didn't know that before. So we're going, oh my God, birds have so much of this. And according to their body weight, some birds have this more than most primates have. And it's more densely neuronally packed and intertwined. And that's why it opened up all of a sudden with this paper in 2005 to start studying the cognitive ability and the emotional lives of birds. We didn't have it before then. And so it's just blown up the science about how wrong we got that, because we were looking through a lens that they're nothing like us. And so we just assumed that they didn't have experiences that we do. And so some of the recent papers that have come out is they've been able to look at the DNA of birds and compare them to primates and apes. And not that being smart is the best thing to be as a species, it's just one of the many things. But they're actually, this one article called them, they're the humans of the bird world. There we go, comparing birds to humans. But they're really smart. Some parrots out-test college students on some cognitive tests. And they put them at some of the parrots at about the 5-year-old level of various ways of being able to make cognitive choices and inferences. So they are really, really smart. And we just never saw it before. We didn't believe it. So that's their cognition. So let's talk about, how do we know what a bird is feeling? So what is this bird feeling? You guys could take it off mute or put in the chat if you feel like interacting. This is one of the angry birds. So what is this bird feeling?
Anger.
Anger, right. So we definitely have made this human. This is definitely anthropomorphism. So let's practice that. Let's go to real birds. Anybody know what species these are? It's our theme species for the day. These are our starlings. and they're out in a bird bath. What are these birds feeling? And remember the two errors, they're nothing like us or they're just exactly like us. So between those two extremes, what do you think these birds are feeling?
They look kind of like how my kids look when they're playing in the water pool.
It looks like they're feeling fun, right? And excited. Yes, yeah. Okay, what, anything else come up for anyone? So Ebony, that's a really good tool, is go ahead and think like them and put it in your body and go, well, if that was me, what would that be? And that's okay to do that. We want to check our assumptions, but go ahead and go, well, if that was me, I'd be having a great time in that water, be feeling really good. And that's motivating them to take a bath. Does anything else cross your mind about, since we're kind of scientists and we want to learn about birds, what else might we want to investigate on what they're feeling? What happens when a bird's feathers get wet? They have a hard time flying, right? So these birds could be experiencing fear. They're going, oh my gosh, my feathers are going to be wet. Oh my gosh, I'm going to have to go find a safe place to dry out. I can't fly as well. And they're in an open space, which means that the hawks are really looking for them. So there could be fear in there. There could be anger or irritation. They may be taking a bath because their external parasites like mites are really bothering them. And so they're irritated and painful. They may be having some territorial issues and not getting along with each other there. I see a male and 3 females or 3 young birds, but even still, they can fuss with each other. So there may be territory as well as going on. So this is the process that we want to think about, is put yourself in the place of a bird, but then go do your homework and go, well, what's really going on with these birds? And we have more and more science to help us understand what birds are doing. And so there is a system out there called the 5 domains of well-being. And it's fairly scientifically set up, is saying, what do they need? And it breaks them up into these 5 categories: nutrition, environment, health, behavior. And this one they added just a few years ago, mental state. Are the birds happy? Are they afraid? Are they stressed? What is their mental state? And so this is a complicated process that has you go through and go, well, what are their needs according to each one of these? What are their needs? And so we can actually do our research and go figure out, well, what do we think they need? So let's continue playing a little bit. If anybody wants to unmute or put it in the chat. We use this. What does the parrot say? We use this in some of our education work in this country with English speakers. And we'll have a little chart, and we'll have the kids or the families point to each of the pictures and say, well, what is that parrot feeling and needing? What do you think's going on? And it's amazing how smart people are with this. We don't cue them on. We just say, what do you think they're feeling and needing? So we're helping people practice by putting themselves in the place of a parrot. So this is a scarlet macaw. And so here's the flying bird. What do you think the flying bird is feeling and needing? What are they feeling? Well, if you were a child, what would you say? Or what would your child say? Or a friend of yours say?
Mike, I see you've unmuted. Did you want to say something?
Yes, it's a feeling. The bird is saying it's nice to be free.
Could be. Could be. They could be going, wow, this wind feels really good. And
Yeah.
Oh, I love my body moving, and it's beautiful down below. They probably have a sense of beauty with flowers and other birds. And so it could be a really great feeling. It could also be of, oh my gosh, I'm out here where the harpy eagles are. So I need to be careful. I'm a little afraid. Could be as well. Okay, so keep on going like that. Here is a young scarlet macaw eating. What is the bird feeling? And just think really simple. Think like an 8-year-old or a 5-year-old. Hunger?
They look surprised that someone's taking a picture.
That's so interesting you say that, Ebony. It's like macaws, this is a kind of macaw, they're somewhat easier for humans to read because they have this bare facial patch. And so I look at that picture and I know that scarlet macaw is looking at me taking the picture. I can tell. I can tell that the bird is just slightly concerned. This bird is around people quite a bit. It's at one of our liberation centers, but you picked that up on it. The bird is just a little bit anxious. It's not totally into, I'm eating and I feel really good. Good pickup. So here's two birds and here's one bird hanging upside down. What's going on there? Hanging on by two toes. Scarlet macaws, we often aren't around the wild ones, so it's difficult for us to know. But these scarlet macaws in Honduras, they almost never quit playing and fussing. Very interactive, very high energy birds compared to other macaws. So they're playing, they're hanging upside down and chasing each other and just really high energy. Like you might imagine 3 or 4-year-old children, just kind of always going after each other, running around. That's what these young birds are doing. And here's one more. They've got the wings up and it's got its foot up at this bird. What might they be feeling here?
Are they both female birds?
I don't know. You can't really tell from looking at them.
Because sometimes the female birds tend to be more, or is it the male birds tend to be more colorful, or the tails or something. So if it's looks like maybe friendship or romance, or saying hello, like a bird hug.
Right. And with scarlet macaws, I think we don't know enough. I have a theory that the males' tails are a little bit longer and the females are a little bit wider, but nobody knows that. That's not been proven. Males generally have a little bit bigger face and their eyes are in a little different position. So generally, and you're right, these two birds are interacting, and if you were watching them, you would be hearing them going, arr. It's like they're fighting. And it's like they're irritated, and it's probably a form of ritual play. And maybe there's some true irritation. Maybe there's some courtship going on there, and it's a pair, and it's just what they do to bond with one another. And here are two young macaws in a natural wild cavity. What do baby macaws? What do young macaws think and feel? If you were sitting there in a nest cavity deep in a tree, what would you be thinking and feeling? Maybe I'm hungry. Where's mom? I'm afraid. I'm cold. And then
Where's mama?
Where's mama? That's what the kids say. They'll say, where's mama? The kids are right on that. And what is this bird feeling? And again, often the children just go right here, because there's a cage, right? And they're going, I'm lonely, I'm sad, I'm depressed, I can't fly. And so people, that's sort of where we'd go. I may have stretched that out too much time doing that, but just by putting ourselves into the place of another bird, it helps connect us. Even by taking this time, going through this slowly, it helps us connect us, and it helps us have empathy for this particular species, or maybe for birds as whole. And what do we mean by empathy? It's the ability to put yourself in the place of conspifics or heterospifics. In other words, the same species or a different species. And it can elicit emotions and empathy that corresponds to a greater willingness to help nature. So this is the way this research project went. So if I had half of you pretend you were a bird, maybe a bird that was sick, maybe a bird in an oil spill, and just be that bird for 15 minutes. And the rest of you go be on your phones or do whatever. And then if I tested you for your generalized empathy, it's across species, afterwards, and I also had tested you before, for that 15 minutes would make you more empathetic. You would answer with more positive, empathetic responses. Multi-species, it's across the board. And also, if I tested you for your willingness to be involved and help environmental concerns, you would test higher than the group who did not imagine they were a bird. So this is an empathy exercise that you can actually use in conservation for people to think like the cat who just had a tooth pulled. You know, what do you think that they might need? And to undo our culture's restrictions that say they're not like us at all. And so this was that study that they did, was that by helping people, like we work with parrots. So we say, what does the macaw say? That you can create emotions and empathy that actually are the basis for behavioral change, is to just put yourself in the feathers or the claws or the hooves or scales of another being. So I have an actual story about how I saw this happen one time. It was really by accident. This is Hector Potiores. He's a biologist in Honduras. And I first met him in 2010 when we went to La Mosquitia, the most remote region in Honduras, to the indigenous people, the Mosquito people. And he'd been coming and going for 20 years. So when we were doing the research and doing the nest monitoring with the people there, he always stayed further back. He didn't really get involved. We were climbing trees and handling the birds. He stayed removed. And then one day we were underneath a tree, and here's a young scarlet macaw, a wild bird. And we lowered the bird so we could do some studies on the bird. And I didn't have my table. So I said, here, Hector, hold the bird. No. No, hold the bird. I need to put the bird somewhere while I go do something else. No. Hector. So I just gave him the bird. And you can look at how he's looking at that bird. And after that time, Hector's commitment to the project grew, his presence, his involvement. And I asked him about it a couple of years after that. And I said, Hector, what happened when I first started working with you? You weren't that engaged. And he said, well, my heart had been broken seeing what was happening to the wildlife and the people in La Mosquitia. So I didn't want to get involved. My heart couldn't take it. But when you handed me that bird and I touched that bird and held that bird, it shifted for me because I felt like I was the bird. And it just felt like I had the capability and the resilience now to get involved. So there's a story of how, empathizing can help us give greater care. And so when we go out looking at birds, is honing that ability, our multispecies intelligence and empathy, so we can be better stewards, so we can respond better to what their actual needs are. And another way that we use that in conservation is, here we are, this is Honduras again, and I'm the veterinarian, and that's a wild parrot there. And so I'm doing all the exams. And one day I said, well, why am I the only one that gets to touch this bird? It's their bird. It's the national bird of Honduras. And so I determined that this chick was doing fine. And I said, well, everybody else should be able to listen to the heart. And so we all took turns listening to the heart. And here is a video of the very first time that I tried this.
Tell me if you can't hear it. I'll move it. Sounds beautiful. It's like music to my ears. It is the prettiest thing. To me, it's the prettiest thing in the world. It's beautiful. It's the prettiest thing. And then when you do surgery and you actually see the heart, you just go, oh my gosh.
Can you see that man smiling here in the background? This young biologist here told me that it was the most transcendent moment of his life to hear the heartbeat of a wild bird, the national bird. It beats about 5 times faster than ours, but it was in rhythm with his. One of the men were crying. And so now what we do when we do any of our, we have quite a bit of science and academic work we do in our conservation, is we always try to take time out to slow down. And certainly with the children, and always just check in with how the bird is doing. How is the bird doing? How are you doing? And I think I have just, this may be one of the last stories where they've done studies of people's ability to empathize and how it impacts the health of birds. I've already told you that if we empathize, we can give greater care, possibly, because we understand them better. We give because we know more, and then we just empathize. We have more resilience. We want to help them. Well, it can also help the animals themselves feel less stress. This was a study with parrots, and they measured the empathy level on a generalized test, a standardized test of all these people where they were hand feed. This is food here, and young parrots need to be fed. So they're feeding these young baby, these chicks that are going to grow up, and one person only fed certain kinds of birds and no one else did. So what they did is they measured the stress level in the parrots, and they determined that the young parrots had less stress if they were being fed by more empathetic people. So just the people's general empathy score resulted in less stressed parrots. It was just one study, so clearly we need to do a lot more work on this. But this is in part why when we do our conservation work, I suggest to everybody that we really slow down. We center ourselves, we breathe deep, we do the science, we know what's going on with the birds, and basically we be the bird. Be the bird. Now, in the case of where you all are looking at birds outdoors, I don't know if this crosses over to looking at birds that are coming and going in the backyard, but I would imagine that birds are pretty smart, and it's certainly like the crows, they're reading our faces. They're kind of like dogs. They can read a human emotions, and they've learned from that. Is maybe there is such a thing as bird whisperers. That the birds can pick up when, I don't know, you're on their side and you move differently and your facial expressions are differently and sound differently. And so they feel safer and less stressed. It could be as an idea. So when you're out looking at birds, you always come back to ourselves and go, am I with the bird? Am I with the bird? And just empty yourselves of thoughts and stories and just be with and be the bird. And maybe they'll get closer to you. Maybe. I don't know if that's your goal. And so in our projects in the Americas, as I said before, that's what we ask. What does the macaw say? And this can be adapted to anywhere. We offer programs like this and we teach this, but we're thinking about doing it even bigger, especially after the pandemic and hearing how people really tuned in and needed birds, is to do this idea of birding for life is help people put themselves in the positions of birds. And so here we are in remote villages and we have all these puppets and they do the play, they mime it and I sort of tell the story. And so they are the baby bird. They are mama bird. They are the poacher cutting down the tree, who has worth and dignity as well. And so we're saying, what does the macaw say? What is everybody doing here? And they move like the birds, and we have them call like the birds. And so putting our actual bodies into the movement of birds is another way to grow our multi-species empathy. So on our website and in one of our books, we have ways to do this, to just go be a bird for 15 minutes. Don't make it a project, just be with the bird. And so what I'd like to try now, I don't know how it's going to work. I have a 9-minute video. It's a guided meditation on putting yourself in the place of a wild scarlet macaw. And you've got a lot of scarlet macaws on this talk, so it's a guided meditation with pictures. I don't know how it's going to work with your ability to concentrate and how the sound will work, but this is a way to put yourself into the bird. And so we did this, and I just like to try it with you all so we can all slow down and just be a bird together for 9 minutes. And so as we head into this, I'm going to take a deep breath. I'm going to invite you to just sort of breathe. I've been talking a lot. And just Sort of imagine that feathers are beginning to grow out of your arms. And you're taking another breath, and you're going to be, yeah, you can turn off your video too. That's a good idea. And turn off your mute. Because maybe you don't want us to see you flapping your wings. And I'm going to go ahead and start this. And then we'll have a discussion afterwards, and then we'll close up with resources available for each and every one.
You never tire of the view from where you perch.
Oops.
Barely tilting your head, you look up into the night sky. The streak of the Milky Way flows in the direction you will go in the early light, but that is still some hours off. You have some itch in your feathers and on your skin, but you do not reach down to preen them, for it is the quiet time, when you move as little as possible. Though you are one of the largest parrots in the world, a scarlet macaw, and not many hunters could take you without some risk to themselves, your parents taught you to be still in the night, for there are always eyes watching you, wanting you. You may not be able to see them, but they can see you. You have grown out of your chick fear at last, but it is not for yourself that you remain vigilant. It is for your mate and 2 feathering children in the cavity several feet below your night perch. You are the sole watcher in this time of nesting, when couples move away from each other to raise their young. Those you protect are counting on you to keep watch, for if danger should come, they would be trapped in their tree cavity home. You can still rest, because only 1/2 of your brain sleeps at a time, while the other half remains alert. With your foot tendon locking mechanism, you expend no energy to perch, so you are both watchful and restful. You tilt your head to the other side as a soft wind tussles your feathers. In the far distance, you see the white sliver flying slowly up out of the tops of the tree branches. You breathe deep, glad of the company of this familiar friend, for it means that brighter light and warmth is not far away with the coming day. You wish your mate was here with you, so that you could lean into her, mixing her smell with that of the 1,000 flowers adorning the many trees around you. One more growing and shrinking of the white sliver, and then your children will be out of the cavity, and you can watch the dancing of the white starbirds together through the long, dark hours. Content with the memory of children long gone, and the bright future for these 2 current youngsters, your eyelids droop, and soon you are asleep, and then into dream time. Your feathers fluff as images of rich seeds and bright flowers slowly move across your consciousness, and then you have a flash of a memory from decades before, when you were the age of your current chicks. You had no siblings, for one had died in the egg, and another had been taken horrifyingly in front of you by a forest falcon. Your mother and father had been out foraging for you both, and had been gone when that fierce death had come. You can still remember your mother's cries when she came to the nest and found her youngest gone, and how both parents had growled at the slightest provocation for several days afterwards. The dream turned darker, for now you recall your mother's solitary moans when your father failed to return one afternoon. You were hungry, but there was no food in mother's crop, for father had not come. You began to cry, and mother covered you with her wings as she had when you were egg fresh. But the hunger and fear lingered throughout the night and into the many weeks afterwards. Your wings flick as the moon rises, acting out a chick's begging behavior, and you jerk awake. You see now that the sky is lighter, though your heart is heavier than before the dream. Mother never knew what had happened to father, but when he had gotten older, she had said that she suspected it was the 2-legged one. Sometimes they climbed high into the trees and set sticky vine traps to take parrots from their homes and families. You shake your whole body with the sound of rushing feathers brushing against one another, trying to rid yourself of any lingering fear and loss. Forest falcons and two-leggeds had to be watched carefully, for they would take what was yours and leave you with a torn heart. But not today, you promise yourself and your family as you bow your head to the brighter light gathering below the moon. You hear a soft cluck from the nest home, for your mate has heard your feathers shaking. You call back, ever so soft, only for her and the chicks. You then hear a bustle of feathers, and there, oh, so darkly red and wondrous, you see your beloved come out of the cavity and walk towards you. You step towards her as well, and then comes the most pleasurable beginning of any day. You bury your beak in her neck feathers and hers in yours, fluffing your feathers in delight. It's as if your two bodies have become one, beaks moving over feathers entwined, the mutual preening itself a promise of commitment and care. The sun's flight is now more visible, and then with a playful nip at your mate, both your feathers sleek, and then still as if one, you jump off the branch and fall into the river gorge. It takes a few beats, but soon you are flying wingtip to wingtip. You can feel the air move with every wing flap of hers, and it is as if you were still touching one another, still preening. This flying with a mate is ecstasy, and you give voice to it with a loud call that sounds far over the flowing forest. Your mate joins you, and you know that many other living beings can hear you, and that knowing wraps you in a web of belonging, power, and purpose. You now fly quiet, for there is a long flight and day ahead of you. The two chicks now eat more than they will as adults, so quickly are they growing, and the flowering trees you favor are some distance away. They used to be closer, but the two-leggeds have been violent to this area. You wonder if this will be the last season you can use this nest home. Perhaps this is what the hard dream time was telling you. Time to go with the new family, as far as one can go, just so it wouldn't be your last family. The sun is now quite warm and high above the trees when you return to nest home, your crop bulging and your heart beating hard, not just from the flight, but from the strong purpose to give of yourself so life could come from life. You land high in the tree and your mate a bit lower. She slowly moves towards the cavity while you both look carefully around to see if there might be danger. Seeing none, she slips silently into the cavity. It is a large space, so you soon follow, calling the name of each chick in turn as you enter. They call out your given name in between gulping breakfast down from their mother, and then it is your turn. It is like all burdens have lightened as you empty your crop into theirs. So great is the satisfaction to care for these two. You climb up to the entrance, keeping watch while you hear murmurs and clucks below you. You imagine your chicks bowing their heads and holding their wings out as mother nibbles on the many sheath-enclosed feathers, helping them to break free so that the feathers can grow. The children follow their mother's lead, returning the nibbling to each other, to their mother, and to every piece of chewed wood around them. Unable to resist this preen ball of love beneath you, you back down and offer your beak and body to the other three. Then you are struck by a vision, as if a dream. One day soon, the four of you will be flying wing to wing, and others of your kind will join you as in the olden days. Your flock line stretching from nearly suns rising to suns falling, an extension of the living, breathing forest beneath you. And once again, you recall your mother's words. No matter the grief and loss, never give up on the power of love. You can come on back. And if anybody would like to share what that experience was like, whether you could follow it or what it felt like to be a macaw, if you were able to get into it.
I like the family oriented stuff about the partner and the little babies. That resonated with me.
Definitely it was anthropomorphized, right? I went to the extreme because they may not use the words mother, father, and I did it on purpose, because after watching parrots for so long, I feel that a lot of the way I used human words to describe their motivations is actually somehow in there. And that all that behavior is true that I told you about. So I went ahead and put it in human terms because I believe they have not similar, but they have a way of understanding family and danger and mates and movement like we do. They do it in a bird way. But I used human words to describe, I guess, about the complexity and the depth of what's going on with them. So I imagine having that meditation for every species of parrot out on your bird out on your porch. You know, that children could go, well, I wonder what the titmouse is thinking. I wonder what the starling is thinking. What's their family life like? So if you want to get into any more multi-species bird exercises, there's all kinds of live cams where you can just sit there and stare at an eagle raising eaglets or an albatross on Guam Island. There's just all kinds out there. So where you could practice this and just be the bird. We have more about multi-species empathy, and we have a whole bird chapter in one of our books. And then, of course, our website, we have lots and lots about these kinds of things, and often bird oriented. And just to finish up, I want to thank you all for being here and being part of this. We'll do similar but different things next week. And if anybody would like, I always like to end up with gratitudes, because gratitudes is a great way to connect and have resilience. Or just anything that you're taking with you from your time here with one another and with this, or any questions or comments, this is our time to do that.
I wrote something down to share as an example of mystical experience in the mysticism classes coming up, because when you mentioned that your friend had said it was this most transcendent experience he'd had, and thinking about like instances where you can feel at one with the world and things like that, that example of hearing the heartbeat and that just the feeling that it took him to, that was very touching. So it gave me like a connection there about those experiences that people seek out to connect with the world.
And do you feel a little bit of that with birds yourself?
Yeah, definitely. When I was saying that I had noticed things I hadn't noticed before, it sort of opened up my eyes to a lot of to something like that, made me feel like I could pay more attention to a lot of things, and it was this kind of nice avenue for connecting to the world around me. So, and birds as a specific way of looking at things.
Well,
I also found it interesting what you said about parrots and their intelligence. I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're gonna take over the world, I tell you. We're gonna probably end our time here really soon, but I'm pretty easy to get a hold of.
so any other thoughts or questions or interactions, and talk among yourselves certainly, but if you want to just reach out to me about anything you thought of that was part of our experience here together, I'd love to hear it.
Well, I just want to say thank you. Thank you, Ebony, for organizing and hosting. I know these things are not easy to do all the managing, so I appreciate that. And thank you for the talk. It's really nice to learn some of those things and just connect with other people about, you know, this experience of seeing birds. And something I've thought about a lot this last year is this feeling of like, oh, yes, I'm noticing these things. And the more I notice, the more I'm able to notice, as someone had said before. But then also this feeling of like, oh, I've lived here for a long time, which means that I have not seen these birds, but they have probably seen me. I've been outside, I've walked. And so this feeling of like, of being seen and knowing that I've been being sort of witnessed without knowing and being able to sort of see back. And so that's just been an interesting thing to think about over this past year and notice what that means in terms of all the creatures around, and feeling like I pretty much don't see a bird unless they're allowing me to see them, because I understand at least their vigilance and all of that. So like just gratitude about that as well. So thank you for that.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much. And Stephanie, we love folks from other congregations. I was trying to get the word out. And so I'm like, yay, we have someone else. So awesome. So I'm going to just share my screen real quick. And as we just do our ending slides here. Okay, let me see. Oops. Just technical difficulties. Okay. Because I have two screens going on my thing, so I'm trying to make sure you see the right one. Slideshow. Okay. Okay, well, is it looking big on your screen, or you're still seeing like it is? Okay.
Kind of big, kind of big.
Kind of, okay. Let's see this page. Okay, well, okay, so we are extinguishing our chalice. So we extinguish this chalice to remember with our heart, mind, and spirit the inherent worth and dignity of all life. May we bring justice and health to the earth. Okay, and just to nice little plug for, we have our second session of Birding for Life next Saturday at 10:30. And then later in the month on the 27th at 7 p.m., we have Mysticism in Modern Times, Historic and Urban Practices, which will be very exciting. And then on August 14th at 10 a.m., we'll have Nurturing Healthy Spirituality, Creating a Path Towards Spiritual Wholeness. So hope to see you all there. And thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, Reverend Dr. LoraKim Joyner, for sharing your wisdom with us. And I love the little sound effects, the birds, and it just added a really special touch that I didn't expect. And that was just really, I resonated with that. So thank you. And we'll see everyone next Saturday.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Good to meet you.
Bye.
Bye.